What's this guide to get good at Malphite? Hey, I'm Wicked, I'm a challenger player. I used to play Malphite in professional play. I still play my solo queue from time to time, and he's an amazing champion as a counter pick. But that's really important, you notice it's a counter pick and not a first pick. Alright guys, let's get into the runes. So the first thing you want to learn is the runes you want to use against low sustain top laners. You want to go Arcane Comet, Mana Flow Band, Transcendence, and Scorch. And then in the second tree you generally go Biscuit Delivery and Time Warp Tonic. Now the reason for this rune page is because you can skill Q, you can fire at, for example at Jax all day long, he's going to lose health, the Arcane Comet is going to proc all the time, and he doesn't have enough sustain to actually survive your poke, unless he goes Don't Chill on 2 magic resist runes, which most people don't do. So you're going to just demolish him and have an extremely easy time. Now the second rune page I like to go is Grasp of the Undying. Then you have Shield Bash because it works really passive. You get Bone Plating because it also works really well with your champion. Or you could change that into Conditioning if you don't need the extra power in the laning phase that Bone Plating provides. And the last one, I go Overgrowth because it's just the best one there. And then the second tree, you want to go Inspiration again, where you have Boots, Cookies, and Time Warp Tonic. Those are the 3 you want to have. Doesn't really matter which 2 you pick, depending on how you want to play the game. Now this rune page is much better for champions where you fight all the time. For example, if you're playing as a Maokai, he got a lot of sustain, you proc your Grasp all the time, you get more health every single time you use it, you also have better traits against him, and he does have enough sustain to survive if you have a Arcane Comet. He can just ignore you and win the lane that way. And now we get to the small runes. This is a really interesting part of Malphite, which is very unique. In the small runes, every single one of them works depending on what you play against. Normally, I'd opt in for cooldown reduction and double armor, but now if I'm playing as a Cassiopeia top, there's no point in having double armor, then maybe you want some magic resist, right? And if I'm playing a super easy to win matchup, then you just want adaptive force. So it all depends what fits your playstyle, and I can't give you the perfect runes for this because there isn't any. Alright guys, let's get into the item build on Malphite. It's also extremely interesting. Normally, you want to go for Sunfire Cape first. It's generally always the best item. Malphite works really well with Bami Cinder, all tanks does. Could also go for Bramble Vest first if you get something like a Fiora, but mostly just go for the Sunfire Cape. Second item, if you're winning hard and they have a lot of armor heroes, you want to go for Iceborne Gauntlet. Now if they do have some magic damage dealers and you also have magic damage dealers on your team, you want to go for Abyssal Mask because it works extremely well with Malphite's burst and it works well with your teammates' magic damage. So there's a lot of different options you can do here. One thing you can also opt in for is a Frozen Heart. This works if they have a lot of auto attackers, and if you want to play a more protective style where you help your team out, that's a very fantastic item for that. And then after the first 2 items, honestly on Malphite, you just want to adapt to whatever you're playing against. You can go for health if you need it, most of the people will need health. Thorn Metal is great on him, stacking insane amount of armor is great on him because you want to use him as a counter pick, so you're often against a lot of AD heroes when you play him. So it means you just stack a ton of armor. And if you go to all the websites with different statistics and everything, you'll see so many different builds on him because it really depends and he can build anything. Now let's get into Malphite's abilities, and the passive is actually the most important one, especially in laning phase. Passive is a shield, you have 10% of your max health for shielding, and it activates if you haven't been hit for 10 seconds, 8 seconds, or 6 seconds, depending on your level. Now this ability is extremely important because you want to keep uptime on your shield at all times. Every time you go into a trade, you prefer to have a shield whenever you're doing so. The Q is also extremely important. It's your main ability for poking down people, and it's not very useful if you're not poking down people. So this is what you want to use if you have Arcane Comet, and otherwise you don't want to use it too much. Now, it's a single target build. You fire out, you target an opponent, you slow them for 3 seconds, you steal their movement speed actually, and then it does a little bit of damage. Now we get to Thunderclap, which is an extremely important ability as well. Malphite gains bonus armor, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30%. It's triple while you're having your passive up, which is called Granite Shield. And then when you activate your W, you do extra bonus physical damage on hit, and your range is increased for 50 bonus range, which is huge. You're gonna have 175. Also, Malphite's basic attacks will do damage through the minions and attack in a cone behind them and hit more targets. Next we get into Ground Slam. This is one of the abilities Malphite is known for. You smack down into the ground, you deal magic damage to all nearby enemies, and you cripple them for 3 seconds. Cripple means that you slow the attack speed from 30 to 50% depending on your level and the ability. Extremely useful, especially against auto attack heavy champions, and is very good for peeling your teammates, your AD carry for example, or AP carry. If the enemies are going in for them, you can slow the attack speed of the enemies, and then you can ultimate them and they can't really do anything for a long time. And then the last one, Unstoppable Force. You dash in any direction you want, and just as the ultimate says, it's unstoppable. They cannot stop it. Now, it deals magic damage and knocks everyone up for 1.5 seconds. That's a long ass time. It's an amazing engage tool. Now, you want to use this with your team. It's very important you do it properly, because if you go in alone, it's not going to do very much. Alright, let's get into the skill on. This is a pretty interesting thing as well. There's 2 ways to do it. If you're playing the Arcane Comet build, then you max Q, second E, and then last W. The reason for this is because you want to spam Q on the opponents at all times, and then you want to do as much damage as you can. See if you can kill them with Arcane Comet and get a lead in the lane, right? Now the second way to do it is to max either E or W first of you choosing, depending what you're playing against. And then second you max the other one, and then you level Q last, because you don't really need Q. And that's when you go for Grasp and you're playing against tanky champions, for example Maokai, Zed, and other champions similar that have a lot of regen and health. Alright guys, let's talk about Malphite's combos. So one thing to note, as we talked about earlier, is his W, when you activate it, it gives you 50 more in attack range, which is really useful. You can attack longer range. Also, it's an auto reset, so what you can do is you walk up, you attack, and then you instant W afterwards to reset it and do more damage that way. Now, one really important way you want to combo your abilities is your passive is super useful, because with the W, Malphite's armor is increased by blah blah blah. This effect is tripled while Granite Chill is active. So when your passive is up, it actually works with the W and gives you more armor. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you E while the passive is up, and that is somewhat of a combo. Even though you don't actually have to do something, it still works that way. So you want to try and use your E early in the fight as fast as possible, and try and keep your shield up at all times when you're fighting people. Now, one thing to note is Malphite combos mostly work with other champions. So if you're playing with a Yasuo, you want to make sure he's in range, then you ulti and he's going to go in at the same time. That's generally how you combo him. You try and combo him depending on where your teammates are, so they can follow up on it. But besides that, there's not that many combos to Malphite. It's pretty simple. Q, auto, whatever you want to do. The W is the reset, and that's what you gotta know.